Hello, welcome back. I want to do a video talking about all the books I read for the first 3 months of this year. Yes, this video's late. I will not be taking any questions. I think I'm sounding like a broken record when I say that, I've got chronic illnesses, I work full time, I'm still getting over a cold, so that's why my voice sounds a bit croaky still. So you're just going to get videos as and when I can. I do feel really thankful. Calsver's using the scratch post at this important time. Perfect timing, thank you. I do feel quite thankful that my reading seems to have come back a little bit. I don't think I'm reading quite what I used to be, the amount I was reading a couple of years ago. But I'm definitely back to reading more than zero, which was where I was at about a year and a half ago. Over the last couple of months, since the start of this year, I have been reading more consistently. I've been involved in a couple of buddy reads. I'm quite active in Faye from Books and Chocoholics Discord. The people over there are lovely, and there's been quite a few buddy reads that have really helped me out, and I find accountability quite helpful. Without further ado, I have got my iPad here just to help me remember, because a lot of these books I read the ebooks of because I got them cheaper, or it was quite a last minute decision to read them because other people were already reading them, so I borrowed them from the library, like the ebook, and I haven't got the physical book, and I need written notes to help my brain, because my brain is mush still. So the first book was To You Shall All Flesh Come by Lumen Reese. This was a really fun book. I picked this up because Faye recommended it to me and it seemed right up my alley. It's vampires, and it was just a really different take on vampires. You're following surgeons, and they've taken it upon themselves to utilise the fact that vampires have really powerful regeneration abilities to start like a black market organ donation ring. So it was just such a unique concept that I'd never really thought of before, and I really loved it. I rated it quite highly. Some of the language was a little bit clunky, but I think because I read it like on ebook, like I just got through it so quickly. I found it really engaging, and I just really love reading about different kinds of vampires. Vampires are one of my favourite kind of like fantasy creatures to kind of read about, and I really enjoy like urban fantasy. So this was like a very different take on having like professional people who have become vampires or are exposed to vampires, and they feel like they need to do some good in this world. They've created some technology that helps curb some of the more seedy and scary sides of vampires. And yeah, it's just a horror unfolding of all of that. But no, I really thoroughly enjoyed this one. I've actually got an audience today. I think both my cats are like sitting, just staring at me. So you might get some B-roll footage of the cats if they don't join me. Haku! No. They're like, what are you doing? You haven't done this in so long. They don't actually remember what it is I'm doing. The next book was Hemlock and Silver by T. Kingfisher. I also read this by ebook. This was a last minute kind of Discord influence pick, and it doesn't take much convincing for me to be persuaded into picking up another T. Kingfisher. I really love their books and I'm enjoying going through all of their back catalogue, and this one is a Snow White retelling, and it's about the main character being like a poisoner. I don't know if that's the right way to describe it. Her ability is poisons, so she's not necessarily fully clued up in like botany and all these other plants and stuff. She only knows poisons, so that does get her a bit into trouble, but it also allows her to be of great help in this book. And I really enjoyed the plot. I love the way T. Kingfisher writes characters. She makes her characters really realistic, and they have personalities. They just have depth to them, and I also really like the kind of romantic interest and the connection, and yeah, I just always have a really lovely time reading T. Kingfisher, and it was Fantastic. The next book is the first physical book, and that's Frankenstein by Junto Into. This is a manga reimagining of Frankenstein for the good majority of this book, and then there's 6 shorter stories at the end focusing on a kind of haunted mansion and like some connected to like a high school students, and it's got like doppelgangers and stuff. I will say I enjoyed the Frankenstein story more so than the others at the end. But again, with a collection, there's always some that maybe don't hit as well. I enjoyed this version of Frankenstein, and I do really like Junto Into's kind of art style. A few pages. Oh, you can tell I read this a few months ago. There's some other short stories in here too. That's the contents page. But I do really enjoy reading his work, and I've read a couple before. I think you can see them here. I've read Uzumaki, Gyayo and Tomi, and I have a few more as well. I really enjoy horror, and reading manga horror is like a whole other kettle of fish, and yeah, this is a great read as well. But I had a good fun reading this, and you can tell that I'm such a mood reader. I'm reading all these books. I read these ones in January. Why am I reading horror manga in January? You read whatever you feel like when the mood strikes. Put that back where it belongs. Then we go into February, and then I had my yearly itch to reread the Harper Connolly series by Charlene Harris, the first one being Grave Surprise. I reread this every year, and if you've been on my channel for any length of time, you'll know that I can't explain why this series has such a chokehold on me. I just love Charlene Harris in general. It's like contemporary supernatural, if that makes sense. The main character was struck by lightning as a teenager, and it granted her the ability to sense dead bodies, and when she comes into contact with them, she can see their last moments of death. And she uses that as a way to help out find missing persons and help solve cases with police. And she's freelance and stuff. So yeah, I don't know why. I quite like mystery. I quite like mysteries with just like a little bit of hint of supernatural. I don't know. Normally I don't really read mysteries on their own. I don't find them very engaging. But again, this series, I couldn't tell you. And the next book I read was A Botanical Garden by Noah Medlock. This book caught my eye a while ago. It's a queer story set in Victorian England, and the characters are a gay couple, and they live in a botanical garden, like a big glass house, and they're a bit wealthy, they're gentlemen, and they're both very strange. One is a taxidermist, and the other is like a botanist, and grows plants for like a horticultural society and sells them, and that's their wee shtick. And then things go quite weird and unusual when they hire like a housekeeper to help them look after their big botanical garden, but because they live in the botanical garden like a house, and yeah, there's weird things happen with plants, and it's very strange. To perhaps describe it a bit better, it's an extraordinary tale of family, fungus, and more than a dash of bloody revenge from an exciting new voice in queer horror. So I absolutely love the cover because it was set in Victorian England, and these are kind of classic gentlemen, even though they're queer. The language used did make it a little bit harder for me to kind of fully get into, even though I thoroughly enjoyed it. And we have an interloper. You saying hello, Haku? Yeah? Okay. You're too hyper. The next book I read was another Tea Crusher, you shouldn't be surprised around here, was Bryony and Roses. And I listened to this one on audiobook because I could get it from the library. And it's quite a short audiobook actually. I think it's like 5 or 6 hours. And this was a Beauty and Beast retelling. And I must have just been in a very big gardening and flowering kind of mood, because the main character in this is like a gardener, and she really loves like getting her hands dirty and using her shovel in the garden, planting flowers and all sorts. And yeah, it's just a slightly different take on the Beauty and Beast retelling. But again, I just really enjoy the way T. Kingfisher does her characterization. She just does things in such an interesting way, and no one is like two-dimensional. Everyone's always very, very interesting. And then we come into March. The first book I read was The Midwich Cuckoos by John Wyndham, and I wanted to read this for quite a while. Several years ago, they made a TV miniseries of this book, and I absolutely loved it. I think it was like 4 or 5 episodes, and it's a horror. And the book, that was the cats. They're quiet as a mouse all day, and then as soon as I'm busy doing something, they're chaos. The book was written in 1957, so it's a classic horror, sci-fi kind of book. And the TV series being based on it is like a modern adaptation. So I really, really enjoyed it. I love going back and reading like classic sci-fi and classic horror. I just love the interpretation that authors have about future possible technologies and things like that. So this is about like a kind of alien kind of invasion, but of just like a very different kind. It's very like insidious and like subtle. So there's this town, a tiny little town called Midwich, and a lot goes down. I don't really want to spoil it, but I would really recommend, if you're not interested in reading the book, watch the TV series. The TV series was phenomenal. I was hooked, loved it. And in a huge contrast to a book that I really enjoyed, I read Where the Axe is Buried by Ray Naylor. And again, as part of Faye's Discord group, this book was chosen as a sci-fi pick for us all to buddy read together. And it was a bit of a miss for quite a lot of us. This story had so much promise. Just reading the synopsis and going into it, so this is right up my alley. This is what I really, really enjoy about sci-fi. But it ended up just being like too vague, and not vague in an enjoyable, mystery, intrigue, trying to work out what's going on. Just in a vague, I don't think any of these characters has a clue. And like the author didn't know either. And the author's supposed to know what's going on, even if the reader doesn't. But it just felt quite like nonsensical and a bit messy in execution. And also another thing, and this comes up in some books, and this might just be a personal thing with the way my brain works with reading, there was far too many points of view. I don't do well with 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 different switching points of view. And I especially don't do well with it in books like this, where the point of view doesn't add anything and it just confuses things. If you're switching between a couple of clearly defined points of view that are in different areas, or they're very distinctively different voices and they're doing different things, I'm on board with that. I can get that, and it makes sense and it adds to the story. But this one, it just felt like halfway through the book you'd get another random point of view that was like a chapter, and I'd be like, what was the point in that? And I also felt like there was a blending of the points of view and voices. Like, I found it quite hard to tell them apart, and sometimes that's harder for me to just get on board with what's going on. Yeah, usually a plot like this is very much up my alley. It was about AI, which is very pertinent to today's world. AI is like huge in this world. Everyone's being watched and monitored constantly, and in different parts of the world, there's different like presidents, and in one of them, I think the Federation is what they call it. That president like uses like kind of cloning, kind of clear AI technology to transfer their brain through. So it's the same president from the beginning, that it's just been like consciousness has been transferred down. And like the world's kind of crumbling because of this like really, really advanced technology, and you're kind of following like a scientist who discovers a way to kind of like subvert like the hyper surveillance and stuff. So it has great promise. I just, no. No. And the next book was Good and Evil and Other Stories by Samantha Schreblin, translated by Megan McDowell. I budgeted this with a friend of mine, Rebecca, and really enjoyed it. We quite like reading our short story collections together, and we had a really good time with this. Samantha Schreblin wrote Little Lies, and I read that a couple of years ago and thoroughly enjoyed it. Oh, are you leaving, Haku? Goodbye. And it was so good. I really enjoyed like that full-length novel, and I didn't quite realise I'm quite bad for like reading a book, really enjoying it, and then never looking at the author's other books. I feel like I should get better at doing that, because clearly if I liked one of their books, I'm more likely to like their other books, but I don't tend to do that. So I didn't realise that she'd written short story collections. So we had a great time buddy reading this together, and short story collections are really good for that, because you can finish the story and then just have great discussions about it. And with most short story collections, there's some stories you love and some that don't quite gel as much. But I had a great time with this. I find that she's got a brilliant way with words, and I have struggled with translated books in the past because sometimes translations can be a bit clunky because nuance is lost because you're not reading it in the original language that it was intended. But I think Megan McDowell's obviously a very good translator, and I just, really enjoy her stories. I will say that her writing's not for the faint of heart. Definitely check out all the trigger warnings. There's a lot of very triggering topics in here, so if you're quite sensitive to certain things, definitely check them out first, because she doesn't hold her punches. And the last book I read in the first couple of months of the year was Grave Surprise by Charlene Harris. This is the second book in the quartet that I started rereading. And yeah, not much to say. It's the second book in a series, no spoilers, but I just love picking the series up every now and again and rereading it. I find the best way for me to get back into reading is to reread favourites. I do kind of find it a bit frustrating because then I'm not getting through my TBR, which is down there. But rereading old favourites is better than not reading at all. So that's what I've read lately. I know I say it every time, but I'm going to try not leave it as long for my next video. We're getting into the nicer day. I really struggle over winter in Scotland because it gets so dark, and even during our daylight hours it's so overcast. It's just not conducive to lighting well lit videos. Words. So I would love to have a chat with you in the comments. Let me know if you've read any of these books and what you think of them, if you have been encouraged to pick these up, or if you've got any recommendations for me, and I'll hopefully see you very soon. Bye bye.